I've been knocked down too much to knock it back up, and I bring the house down whenever the odds are stacked up against me.
Nick Walker is out of the Olympia, the 2024 Olympia. It was big surprise, huge shock for me in particular, just because I thought everything was on track with him. I thought he was coming back to make um, kind of a redemption to what we saw at the New York Pro earlier in the year. The pictures that he was putting out were looking good. So that part is a bit confusing, and I'll explain why. Because of the justification that him and Matt gave with regard to why he was not, um, not competing. And so let's just get into it. So basically, Matt and Nick came out saying that he was not competing in the Olympia because his body was not responding to what he was doing. It just wasn't a look that they were comfortable with. It wasn't a look that they wanted for the Olympia, and it wasn't a look that really was going to do any damage in the lineup that the Olympia was bringing. So the Olympia is the best of the best. So you want the best physique possible, and he just wasn't bringing that according to them, and he wasn't going to have enough time to get himself there. So it is surprising because Nick is a fairly young man. He's not old, so like you wouldn't think that his body would start giving out on him this early. And also it was just interesting because we saw him at the New York Pro, and he was not looking like the same old Nick that we are used to with that gnarly conditioning, and so much so that he was almost beaten there. And a lot of people think that Martin Fitzwater should have beaten him. Um, Maybe Nick's name kind of pulled him up a little bit. We don't know. I mean, it was definitely like a battle, but I think Martin really brought what he needed to win. But either way, it's in the past now. Nick won that show, but now coming back to the fact that he is pulling out of the Olympia, it makes you think about the New York Pro again and wondering if the same thing was happening back then as is happening now. And maybe now is just to the point where it's not, is unrecoverable. Maybe the New York Pro was a small, because it's a smaller show than the Olympia, because the quality wasn't going to be there like it is in the Olympia. They thought, let's just go ahead and go with it and see if we can get a win, which they did. But now with the being at the Olympia, having the Samson Dowdas, having um the hotties, and just everyone else, involved in this show who are top level bodybuilders. Nick was going to be demolished, basically, is what it sounds like if they would have put him on stage. Um, it's surprising. I don't know what it could possibly be. I don't know if it's like a legitimate health issue, or is this when they say not responding, like what are they referring to? Is he not responding in the sense that he's just not responding to the drugs? Is he not responding because there's a health issue and he just can't push as much as he needs to? What are we talking about when he's not responding? I mean, I think we can all agree that probably what that means is he just looked bad, but for what reason, it's hard to say. They didn't give us a lot of info. I mean, they were straightforward with regard to the reason that he just doesn't look good, but they didn't go much beyond that. Not that they should. I mean, it's you know, his personal things going on with him. We don't really have per se the right to that information, but it would be interesting to know. Um, Matt was saying things like he was like he was too calm, like things in his life were really smooth, and sometimes Nick doesn't do well in the lack of chaos, that he performs better when he's in chaos. I don't know if I agree with that. I don't see how that's possible. Not from a scientific standpoint with regard to the cortisol, and your body always functions better when it's not under a lot of stress. I mean, that's just the way the human body works. Now, maybe in the mind works, his mind works better when he's under pressure. That I could see, but bodybuilding is, it's kind of a two-phase sport. There's the mind, but then there's also just the body responding to what you're putting it through. And a lot of times that has nothing to do with you. It's just the way it goes. So in those kind of situations, the body part aspect of it is really functions best when you have a nice, smooth, like stress-free environment, that's you have a good routine. So it sounds like that's what he had. And but if for some reason he wasn't responding. And then also, I mean, they're saying that his life was pretty smooth and everything was going great, but we do know that Nick traveled a lot during this last year since the Olympia. So it was a lot of, if anybody's ever moved, which I'm sure most of you listening to this have, it's very stressful to move, especially if you're moving from state to state. And even if you have all the money in the world to do it, even if you can hire everybody to do it, all the movers and this and that, it's still stressful. It doesn't matter. It's just uprooting and moving to a different spot is always stressful. So he did that multiple times this last year. So maybe that had something to do with it. Um, but it's sad to see him not compete because if you remember last year, he was looking great. I mean, he was going up to the Olympia. He was in his best shape, in probably best shape we've ever seen him. His conditioning was incredible. His like the pictures that he was putting out were amazing. We just really thought that he was going to do some damage, and that's before we knew what the Olympia was actually going to turn out like, which is that a lot of people were off. I mean, even Hadi was off in the Olympia last year, so potentially he could have won, or at least placed extremely high last year. So, and then that quad tear happened, and then he wasn't able to compete. And it's really, he was very emotional about it. It was very sad to see, very sad to hear him talk about it. So we thought this was going to be that year, that comeback year that he was really, eagerly awaiting. And then, again, the New York Pro gave us a little bit of a pause. We're like, okay, what's going on here? But then you kind of put it off to the side, said, hey, it's probably just something that they kind of didn't get right. The peak wasn't exactly right. And it was strange because Nick said it was his best look, which I don't see how he could say that. Maybe that's just what he wanted to say at the time, but that was definitely not his best look. And now seeing him not competing this year, it really kind of hurts. It probably hurts him emotionally and mentally. It's going to be really tough on him. I did notice, so I was doing some YouTube deep diving, and which if you guys don't follow RX Muscle is a great resource um, for all these kinds of things, all the news, bodybuilding news, and things like that. And I love listening to what Dave has to say sometimes about these kind of situations. He's been in the industry for quite a while, and he kind of knows what he's seeing, and he's got good insights into different matters. So as I was listening to Dave, one thing that kind of stood out to me was that Dave felt, so I'll just preface this by saying Dave felt that a picture that he was sent some weeks ago prior, to this time frame prior to the announcement, he saw Nick and Nick looked natural. That was the words that Dave used, Dave Palumbo. He said Nick looked natural. And that's not good. I mean, if you're a professional bodybuilder, you shouldn't look natural, especially when you're not natural. You definitely shouldn't look natural. And Dave has an astute eye. He knows what he's looking at. And if he's looking at Nick several weeks before the Olympia, which is pretty close, and he's saying you look natural, that's a problem. Now, Dave goes on to say that it's possible that, he his gear was bunk, that he didn't or underdosed, very difficult to know, but something wasn't right. He wasn't looking like the Nick that we're used to. He wasn't even looking like he was running a cycle. So that's for sure. Um, if you take David at his word at face value, for sure has to be the issue that's going on. I mean, it could be something else, but if he's running a cycle and he looks natural to someone like Dave, then we're, someone who's been in bodybuilding, who's seen for, 30 years, guys running cycles, that's a real big issue. And so I'm gonna share the screen. I'm gonna play a little clip from Dave's episode there where he talks about it, and you guys can kind of see what I'm referring to. Let me see if I can share the screen. Share screen. Okay. Okay. Alrighty. So it looks like I'm sharing right now. So question is why? I created species nutrition. Hopefully this kind of gives you an idea of what I'm talking about here.
Last year, Nick had a hamstring tear about 2 weeks after he built a little off last year. We know that routines are very important.
Let me see here.
He skated out of there with the wind. He looked big and full. And I said, all right, you know what? This guy's just got to the conditioning a little bit more.
I think this is when he talks about it.
That's very close. Because, I mean, the guy's got crazy, freaky size. He has separation in the muscle. He's got crazy vascularity. You know, he's a mutant. He's a freak on stage.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm gonna stop it right here for a second. So that's the thing is Nick is freaky even at his worst. So that sometimes can throw you off. You're thinking, oh, well, yeah, he doesn't look great right now, but he's so freaky. Even at his worst, he makes you believe that somehow he's going to come in and still cause damage in the lineup. So
he's got a lot of energy on stage. He brings something special, to the sport. That's why we're all excited when we hear updates from him and we see him talk confidently about what he's going to bring to the stage. But I know that personally, I had not seen that side of Nick that we were used to seeing, where he was very confident, making predictions. He's going to win the Olympia. Seeing a lot of updates from him. He's not the kind of guy to hide, from. He's out there. He's putting stuff up on a regular basis because he's like, look, this is who I am. Here I am. Look at me. I'm coming to win the Olympia. I'm going to bring my best. And that was always, the message he said. We didn't see that this year. So that, to me, was a little suspicious. And I had mentioned a few weeks ago, talking about who we should look out for on that Olympia. Saying it's kind of weird that we hadn't seen that. They put it out there. I saw some pictures of that.
so here he talks about this
secretly on the down low. Of course, I would never release to anyone because they were given to me on the down low. And I just didn't like the way he looked. This was about 3 weeks after the show.
So so I forgot how many weeks when I was talking about Dave referring to this, but 3 weeks out from the show. So 3 weeks out from the show, this is what Dave saw.
He's behind. Matter of fact, there was a comparison picture. I think it was from like 3 weeks from the New York Pro versus 3 weeks from the Olympia. And I'm like, he's like behind it. Not behind in conditioning. He just didn't look full. He didn't look gnarly, veiny, grainy.
So that's interesting that Dave said that he didn't look behind in conditioning. So this is kind of what makes Dave and myself feel that this was an issue of just not not appropriately dosed gear because he was doing the right things. He was getting in shape. It just he wasn't seeing what he would normally see when he was preparing for a show.
He looked almost natural to me. Now, I say that tongue in cheek, but not really, because I've had to have conversations with bodybuilders who I've worked with, who I've said to them, you know, you're leaning out and everything for this show, but you look kind of natural. And it's a very uncomfortable conversation to have with someone when you tell them that, because it's kind of insulting in a way, but at the same time, it's me giving my honest opinion that something doesn't look like it's working. Okay, now that they're eating the diet and they're sticking to the plan, and we know that Nick doesn't deviate from anything, and we know that you're training hard in the gym. We know Nick doesn't deviate.
And that's the point I wanted to bring out. This in no way is a hit on Nick because like Dave said, Nick is disciplined. He's known for being very disciplined, very routine based, very disciplined, doesn't go out, doesn't party, goes to sleep at an appropriate time, weight train, does everything exactly how you should be doing him, doesn't miss meals. So in no way is this a knock on Nick. We're just trying to figure out what happened. Most likely it just looks like this is something that Nick had no idea or just didn't have any control over. So
That if you don't look like you're on a, you know, cycle of anabolics, you know, and you don't look like your skin is busting, you know, and full and round and gnarly, veiny, if you're not exhibiting that, yet you're doing everything right, something else has to be wrong. And the only other option, in my experience, I've been doing this for over 30 years now, is usually something with the gear is wrong. Now, is the gear fake? Is it underdosed? Are you doing something different that you've done in the past? I'm assuming he's not doing anything different than what he did in the past, but he could be using gear that's possibly not good. Now, I don't know this for a fact. I'm putting it out there only because the look that he had rang some bells off in my head, set some red flags off. So, you know, obviously, I would have to believe that someone of his caliber, his level, you know, be smart, would test his gear. So if you're not getting gear from a legitimate compounding pharmacy or a pharmacy, you know, in another country, you know, and you're using underground gear, you have to be a nutcase not to like test the gear. I don't care who gave it to you, and you know, vouch. You should get those Roy test kits that Bill Llewellyn makes. I sell them on DavePalumbo.com, and test all your compounds. They're $20 a tester. It's, I mean, it's a pretty small investment, you know.
yeah. So that's basically it. I don't want to belabor the point here. But it appears that from what Dave thinks, I have to believe that that theory is on the short list of what happened. It could, it could be that, could be a health issue, could be um what else? I mean, that's really the only thing I could think of is health issue, um, and bad gear. That's the only thing I can think of. But you can see him. I'm gonna move this on to where Nick is talking, and like this. I mean, again, this could be just he's just you know little bloated, whatever the case may be. But he looks natural here, and I know he's got his shirt like on, but he looks very fluid retentive, so which could point to possibly like a kidney or some kind of something that would cause severe fluid retention. Of course, as a bodybuilder, when you're putting on mass, lots of mass, it could be just the fact the process of doing that is causing fluid retention. But of course, he was prepping for Olympia, so he was actually should be less fluid retentive. This is an off-season Nick, even though it kind of looks like that. And that's why I kind of agree with Dave because he does look natural. So here we go.
He felt relaxed. You know, I felt it's my body too. My head was in the game. I gave 100%, ate right, trained right, just didn't look the way I was supposed to look. So I don't buy into the whole story that his coach Matt Jensen said, "Hey, you know," and it was really not a story. It was really Tim speculate, right? It's a theory. Well, Nick thrives in chaos, and when there was no chaos and everything was nice and quiet.
So that's basically it. I'm gonna go ahead and unshare this. Stop sharing. There you go. So yeah, so that's basically it. And I just uh, I it's all in all, it's just very sad to see because I was really, really looking forward to seeing Nick on that stage. I really thought that at his best, he was going to be in the top three. I don't see, I know that people are like, Andrew's great, Samson's great. I get all that. They are great. But something about Nick stands out that doesn't happen with everyone else on that stage, at least not at this point yet. And so I truly thought Nick was going to come in with some fire under him, but it's sad to see that he's out. But now what that does is now upset the deck a little bit. And so now we don't have to worry about Nick if you're another, competitor. That's one down. So your placing potentially could move up. So we'll see how everything plays out. There'll be more videos like this as things go on. But put down in the comments, guys, what you think happened to Nick. Of course, we're all just speculating, nobody really knows, but we do have a lot of listeners that are in the medical field. We do have a lot of listeners that are bodybuilders themselves. Just your thoughts. Again, what Dave is saying is just his views and his assumptions on what happened. None of us really know. These are my assumptions on what happened. And whatever you guys put down in the comments is going to be your assumptions. So please don't fight over this. This is just what people are, thinking could have happened. So, all right, guys, get to the comments.